this video, you know exactly how to get full marks on Edexcel Language Paper 2, question 3. And if you watch the end as well, I'm going to give you the 3 top mistakes students make and how to make sure that you can avoid doing those. So firstly, what is the question? It will be analyse how the writer uses language and structure to interest and engage the reader. So it's all about here, language and structure techniques, and we're linking it back to the effect on the reader. So the question assesses how you understand language and structural choices, not just one or the other, and their impact on the reader. Quite simply, we've got to know language techniques, we've got to know structure techniques, and we've got to link it back to the effect on the reader. So marks for this, it's 15 marks, time is 12 to 15 minutes, and the focus is how and why the writer's methods shape meaning and engage the reader. When I say writer's methods, it's like their language and structural choices. Is their tone, their language, structure techniques, how it basically shapes meaning, so what it tells us, and how it engages the reader. What is the reader's reaction to it? That's all we're thinking about. So techniques to analyse. We should explore both language and structure techniques, and it is including imagery. So we can think about imagery. The definition of imagery is a descriptive language that appeals to the senses like sight, sound, smell, taste, touch to create a vivid picture in the reader's mind. So when I say vivid, like a really clear picture. So imagery allows us to really understand as a reader what's going on, to compare it to things that we know, to really get a good, vivid image, this image in our head of what it is like. So an example in non-fiction would be the streets reeked of smoke and sweat, the air thick and unmoving as protesters packed into the square. So we could say here this evokes a sensory image of the setting, helping the reader to feel as if they're there, increasing engagement and emotional impact. So you can see there, I've talked about imagery. This is an example of a language technique that I could look at. And then what I'm doing is I'm saying what it would show and then how that links the impact on the reader. So that's an example of one of the techniques. Now, what I'd always recommend you to do, guys, is for these questions, for any language questions, is to make sure you pre-learn language and structure techniques and know the effects of them. And then also you really want to make sure that you understand how that fits into a structure. So, for example, if I went on to language paper 1 and went on to question 3, this would go through a structure that has literally been created by examiners and teachers that literally include everything you need, including the techniques, sentence starters, and then we've even got model examples on there as well, which literally shows you step by step how to do every single part of this structure. Then all you've got to do is put it into your exams, and it's the easiest way to get a top grade in language. And the second technique we look at is a metaphor. So I'm going to give you 2 language ones and 1 structure one. So definition of a metaphor is a comparison that says something is something else to convey a deeper meaning or symbolic message. So a metaphor is a good one because it allows us again to have this comparison. So just like with imagery, it allows us to see this image in our mind. A metaphor allows us to compare it to something that we're familiar with. So example in non-fiction, social media has become a double-edged sword, connecting us but also cutting through our attention and time. Here, social media is metaphorically described as a weapon, suggesting it has both positive and harmful effects. This deepens the writer's argument in a memorable way. So we can see here is that we're saying social media has become a double-edged sword. We're not saying it's like a double-edged sword. That would be a simile. We're saying it is a double-edged sword. So this actually allows the reader to really understand the severity of it, because we obviously understand what a sword is. A sword is a pain and a sword causes harm. So by comparing it to a metaphor, something that is harmful, it allows us to really understand the extent to which the author is talking about the harmful effects of social media in this example. And then lastly, a structure technique. So we're going to go through 3 techniques. This is our 3rd technique. And it is zooming in. So shifting in from focus from wide to detail. So what this actually is the writer begins with a broad or general view and then narrows down to a specific detail or image. So what they would tend to do is they might be talking about something at large and then they really zoom in and focus on something. Now, this is something you might have done in your own creative writing, for example, or you do in creative writing where you'll kind of talk about the setting and then zooming on one thing. And that is actually a structural technique because it's shifting our focus, it's shifting our attention to different details. And then an example of this would be the city was alive with movements, traffic humming, crowds bustling, but in the middle of it all, a single red balloon floated quietly past the boy's hand. So you can see that what this would be is we could see the shift in focus from the city. We're talking about the city at large. It's the kind of broader general view. And then it zooms in and focuses on this red balloon floating past the boy's hand, which is more of a specific detail. So it takes the reader's attention from something larger to something more specific. And that's a really good one with structure techniques. So many students struggle with talking about the effects of structure techniques. So another thing I always recommend as well is to learn the effects of structure techniques, to pre-learn them. So you're going to pre-learn, of course, your structure with your sentence starters that you'll get from things like the Light Up Hub. Then you're also going to learn techniques and the effects of techniques. So you know when you go and spot them in the exam, you know what the effect is. So I'm just going to show you, for example, on a structure technique sheet we've got here, that we know, for example, with asyndetic listing, which is a structural technique, we know the effect of it is to increase the pace of a text through the way that listed items quickly accumulate. So what I would do is, because I've already pre-learned that, if I was able to spot that it was asyndetic listing in the exam, I would already know that is the effect of it, and then I would just link that effect to whatever the meaning of the text is. And it's a really easy way that if you struggle with English language, because you can't pre-learn things in the same way you can for lit, having pre-learned structures, pre-learned sentence starters, pre-learned effects, that is the way you revise for English language. Now let's look at mistake number one, the mistake that students tend to make, is that there's generic or surface level comments. So a low level example would this be, the writer uses language to make it interesting, this engages the reader and makes them want to read on. I hate the phrase, this makes the reader want to read on. Why do they want to read on? What? Like, that doesn't tell me anything. Tell me more. So why this is wrong, it's vague, repetitive, shows no understanding of how or why the language works. It just tells me very boring stuff. So what you want to do is you want to zoom in on specific language choices, explain what they show, how they work, and why they engage the reader. And avoid repeating the question phrasing. So avoid literally saying the same thing over and over. So for example, a high-level example would be, the writer uses the verb lurch to describe the movement of the train, which creates a sense of instability and danger. That's what it shows. Then how it works is the vivid choice makes the reader feel the same unease as the passengers, and why it engages the reader, drawing them into the chaotic setting. So you can see we got a what, how, why approach here of what it shows, how that works, and why it engages the reader. Because remember, for this question, everything must link back to the reader. And mistake number two is overemphasis on punctuation without purpose. So what is a low-level example would be something like, the writer uses commas to interest the reader and make the sentence flow. This makes the reader want to keep reading. Now, like I said earlier, the most commonly badly done thing on this question is structure techniques, because most students don't know how to comment on structure techniques or aren't as confident, which of course you need to do for this question because it's a language and structure question. So what we want to do is we want to really make sure that we understand the effects of structure techniques, and we don't just comment on like punctuation, which is an easy structure technique, without commenting on the purpose. So commas and colons aren't effective on their own unless linked to meaning. So describing punctuation with no real effect leads to empty analysis. And like I said, punctuation is a really nice and easy one to pick out, but you need to make sure you link it back to a wider meaning or message. So only mention punctuation if it contributes to tone, emphasis, rhythm. And this is a massive thing we go through on the Light Up Hub, guys, of like making sure that you're not making these common mistakes, making sure you're using the structure properly and putting it in, because these mistakes come up every year, and that's why having good structures and sentence starters genuinely makes all of the difference. So you want to focus on why the writer has used it, how it shapes meaning or structure. So the high-level example would be, the colon in, there was only one choice left, run, creates a dramatic pause. So that's kind of what I'm saying, the tone, emphasis, rhythm, highlighting the urgency of the character's situation and intensifying suspense for the reader. So then again, I've linked it to why the writer has done it. I've linked it back to what the impact is on the reader. And then the third and final mistake is lack of whole text awareness. So a low-level example would be, the writer says dark shadows to make it spooky. This engages the reader. Boring. It relies on one isolated quote and ignores the rest of the text. There's no awareness of tones, shift, how the extract builds meaning overall. We want to be looking at the whole text here. We'll be looking at overall what the text shows, how things shift, how structure techniques contribute that, how language techniques contribute that. So how we want to do it is just choose examples from different parts of the text. Easy way to fix it. And it shows awareness of how tone or focus shifts across the passage and links methods to the writer's overall intention. So by literally picking out different quotes, it forces you to talk about different moments, and that will give you a better opportunity to talk about how it's changed throughout the text. So a high-level example would be, at the beginning, the writer uses unsettling imagery like shadows pressed against a glass to build suspense. Later, this shifts to relief as the character escapes. So you see, I'm actually talking about a different moment. This structural movement from tension to calm keeps the reader emotionally engaged and mirrors the character's experience. So you can see here very clearly, I'm talking about different moments. And that's a really important thing to do. We don't want to just talk about one moment. We'll just literally get me a different quote out, and that will help you talk about different moments. So if you like this, guys, make sure you do subscribe to the channel, and make sure, of course, you check out the Light Hub. If you like these kind of videos, you're going to absolutely love the Light Hub. We've got all of this, quizzes, condensed notes, video breakdowns, literally everything, all in one place, and all you've got to do is log in.